Hi, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Cornerstone Conversations. I am here with Tazim Elkington. Hi, Tazim.
Hi, Tama. How are you?
I am very well. How are you?
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
The cold is starting to dissipate, so I'm wishing we see more sunshine soon.
I know. Yeah, it's about time. We deserve it, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so today our topic of conversation is vulnerability. Vulnerability is a big word. Even to say it, it's a mouthful, yeah?
Yes.
Vulnerability.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so we want to just get right into it. And I have a couple of questions that we'll just walk through as we go along. Why are we as a people averse to this word called vulnerability?
So, do people like to show what they're feeling?
No.
Are people allowed to show what they're feeling? From the time they grow up, are they encouraged to show what they're feeling?
Absolutely not. No.
So let's go back to the way we've grown up and the trajectory of our lives. We've actually been more often made to feel ashamed of our emotions, ashamed of showing how we feel, what we feel. It's not acceptable. One is supposed to kind of gloss over their own feelings and be more open or more accommodating of other people's feelings. And even other people, even as I say other people's feelings, those other people don't show their feelings per se, unless you have that odd character, which we all do, one or two odd characters in our lives that can overdo the whole showing of emotions. However, it's not part of the way we were raised. Feelings. So being vulnerable is actually considered a weakness.
Yeah. And is it? Is it a weakness?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. As far as I'm concerned, unless you can actually express your emotions, and of course there's a fine line, because it's so easy to tilt to the extreme. So as long as we can find that balance of being able to say what we feel, this is something else we are not socialized to do, is to speak what we're feeling. What are you feeling right now? So if I were to ask you, Dama, what are you feeling right now? What would your answer be?
Would this be, what am I feeling emotionally?
Well, feelings are emotional.
Yeah. Well, I could be feeling cold.
You're feeling, yeah, I'm talking about the inner feelings, not the external ones.
Right.
You see how you've just responded? Do you see how you've just responded?
Typical. Yeah.
Yeah? This is how we are taught to respond. We are taught to respond from an external place where we actually don't speak about what's going on inside.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So let me ask you another question.
Yeah.
What are you feeling about being home for the last, 7 months, literally?
I feel a little, there's been upheaval, obviously. And what I felt at first is not what I'm feeling right now. At first, I was scared. I was anxious because of living in the unknown and not knowing what's going to happen next. But with time, I've come to accept things as they are. And now I'm feeling quite calm. I feel that sense of peace, and I feel like, yeah, this is to really just make the most of what is there, which should always be there, the case anyway. COVID shouldn't have to have been the one to teach me that, but yeah.
So does that mean that you are not afraid of the unknown anymore?
Yes and no. I'm, I think what I want to feel is to not be afraid of the unknown. But obviously, I think it's just right now I've gotten used to this. So it's easy to say that everything is okay because I've gotten used to it. But maybe if there's another curveball that's thrown my way, that's completely different, I might end up going back to that same, space. You understand?
So this is, yes, completely. I mean, what a great way of what a great answer. And it actually brings this whole vulnerability. So you are vulnerable, just like billions of people all over the world, because this is a worldwide situation, and you are vulnerable with the unknown, not because you knew your life, just because we plan and we organize and, we get a certain amount of money every month, and we pay our bills, and we plan when to go on holiday and what we're going to do next. We think that's the known, right? But what COVID did was literally make every human being very vulnerable and bring out their deepest fears and anxieties of what is going to happen to my life. Am I going to be able to pay my bills? Am I going to be able to cope? Am I going to be able to deal? Am I going to be able to cater for my children? You have young ones. Am I going to be able to do all that? And then realizing that this was beyond your control, beyond your city, beyond your country, that this is beyond anybody per se. The easiest solution was to just accept the situation, right?
Yeah.
And slowly ease off those emotions, and talk yourself into acceptance.
Yeah.
Rather than feel vulnerable. And that's a great way of overcoming something that is not even in your control. However, vulnerability, let's take it to another level. Vulnerability is the root cause is fear of rejection, fear of not being approved of, fear of not being liked, and fear of someone really seeing you for who you are. Because all of us put on these masks and facades to say, I am this, I am that. We create all these identities about ourselves. I'm able to deal, I can do this, I can do that. And we put on these masks and these facades and actually refuse vulnerability into our lives. Because vulnerability is being weak. Vulnerability is showing who I really am. Vulnerability means that people will judge me. And people will really get to know who I am inside.
And what's wrong with that?
Absolutely nothing.
So why do we hide who we are then?
Because that's how we've been raised, for one thing. And secondly, like I said, vulnerability is considered a weakness. It's not considered a strength. Actually, vulnerability is a strength. It's a strength when a person has the courage to show who they really are. So like, let me bring it to myself, okay? There are people who can't won't deal with me as a person because I am so open, I am so expressive, I say things as I see them. I don't bring my personal biases and prejudices and judgment, because I've had to work so hard on all of this stuff. I was brought up the same way as you. However, I had to consciously work on these parts so that when I am saying something, it's not coming from a place of judgment. It's not coming from a place of bias. It's coming from a very neutral point. And it's coming from my experience of seeing something as the reality it is, not based on a distorted perception. So most people are operating from these distorted perceptions of who they think they are and who they think other people are. I mean, I have heard of people who have never met me and, have these great opinions about who they think I am. And I'm like, all right, good for you. It's not going to frazzle me at all because I really don't live by other people's opinions, right? So we put on these faces because we think that this is how we are going to be accepted by others. So for example, in a relationship, scientists have done research on this, that the first 6 to 18 months in an intimate relationship, people are really not themselves. And for those people that then decide to become life partners or long-term partners during the 6 to 18 month period, then suddenly get a shock when the real person comes out after 18 to 24 months. And then you start asking, but who is this? This is not the person I started dating. This is not the person that I thought I fell in love with.
Yeah.
Or this is not the person I thought I wanted to be with. And it's not one way, it can be both ways. It mostly is both ways.
Yeah.
But by then, maybe they have a kid on the way. Maybe by then they've gone and spent thousands of shillings on getting married and collecting expensive presents and what have you. So what happens? It becomes an anchor around someone's neck. And then people stay in for whatever bad reasons that they decide they have to stay in. So, how would it be if we went out on a date with someone, and on that first date you say, so do you have integrity? And most times I'm sure the person's going to get up and run. Okay. Or are you responsible? What does responsibility mean to you? These are the kinds of conversations that would bring the real person out. Instead, we talk about, oh, I love your hair, I love your butt, you have beautiful eyes. Of course, the first point is physical attraction. I'm not living in the dark ages. I know this, right? However, when we understand that the first point of intimacy is that physical attraction, and knowing that it's the physical attraction, because if you're not physically attracted to someone, you're not even considering anything, okay? But knowing that this is just that first physical, hormonal, chemical thing happening with someone that you don't know nothing about. And so before you jump into bed with that person, it's really important to ask these questions to figure out what value system this person is following. Is this person open? What kind of relationships have they had? And this is the way to really build by creating a deep foundation from the bottom down, not from two people, boom, and then now you're in lust. And while people are in lust, their brains don't function properly. It's like when it rains, it's so vague.
Yeah. Like Nairobi
You run
drivers
into
and trains. Yeah.
you run into the back of a car because it's drizzling and you wondered why.
Yeah. 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 But then these questions you're asking somebody on this first date, what guarantees there that they're going to be honest? Because that's another thing. It's one thing for someone to answer the questions, but it's a completely other thing for them to answer them honestly.
Well, simply you'll figure it out. If you're smart enough, you'll figure out whether this person is straight or not. Because the other thing is, after you've asked those questions, you might not even get a second call.
That's true.
Yeah, it'll show up for itself.
Yeah.
So if people want healthy intimacy and relationships, I do this not even with men per se, because I haven't been dating for a while, and I don't even know if I'm interested. So for me, I do this with people I meet I think we've had this conversation, you and I. We've had these deep conversations about, what is your value system? What is it that's important to you? And we've had these conversations.
Yeah.
And it's because I want to know that the person in front of me is someone that I can, that I have similar values to, that I can be open with. I don't want to be with someone that I'm going to talk about your hair and your nose and whatever else, or can we have a cup of coffee? And that's what a lot of people do, is they meet for these coffees and these teas, and then they gossip about whoever they can. Those kind of conversations don't interest me at all, never have.
Yeah. Okay, so vulnerability it's more associated with women than it is with men. It's almost like it's okay for women to be vulnerable, but men are not really allowed to be. Can we dive a little bit into that?
Sure. So boys are told from the time they can understand that they must not cry. Literally, boys are told, wacha kulia. When in Dume, you're supposed to be strong. Nyamaza. What kind of person are you going to become if you're going to be a crybaby? So men's emotions have been shut down before they could even recognize it. Mm. And so men's emotional intelligence has been stumped. And in the process, what they have done, because they have been repressed and suppressed, they have in turn repressed and suppressed women. Mm-hmm. This is how that cycle has carried on and on, because men are not being brought up to express, understand their own emotions. They are not brought up being taught. I mean, who has been brought up to be emotionally intelligent? Nobody's been brought up really to be emotionally intelligent. This is something that, you fall into, like I did 30 years ago, realizing, oh my goodness, what I'm saying, what I'm thinking, and what I'm doing are all over the map, until I had to work on getting that into alignment. Yeah. So men think that they have to be macho, that they have to be strong, they have to put up this facade and this front because they are male. And now is the time we have to bring up boys, allowing them to be emotionally intelligent, showing them what that means. Because those are the kind of boys that will become men that you want your daughter to marry. You don't want her to marry a man when you say, I'm feeling sad, and he turns around and he says, you're full of crap, and I'm tired of hearing this. Whereas the kind of emotionally intelligent man will turn around and say, darling, How can I help you? What do you need right now? Come here, let me hold you. And, literally something like that can diffuse a whole situation.
Mm.
So men have been more repressed, and then they've repressed women. This is where we're still fighting for women's rights today.
Yeah. So it's just a cycle, a never-ending cycle. Yeah. Yeah. And so how is it then? So women are more vulnerable because they are allowed to be more vulnerable from the time they're young, right? It's more acceptable to an extent, it's more acceptable.
I think women are more adept to show some feelings. However, I don't think even in today's world, women allow themselves to be that vulnerable.
Yeah.
And especially women who are working and who are in senior positions and who are out there in the world, they have actually adopted to behave more like the men because they are living in a man's world.
Yeah.
And so they have to put up this front as to, I can't show I'm emotional because I'll lose brownie points and that'll bring me down a notch. So it's such a cyclical thing that's gone on for generations. And it's time to change it. It's really time to change it because from here on, emotional intelligence and proper value systems are going to be the imminent parts of how we change the way we live and how the world changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's, in fact, when you mentioned that, I just read something from I think the New Zealand Prime Minister. She was talking about how often she's criticized that whenever she shows compassion or vulnerability, she's called weak. But then she was saying, just because you're vulnerable does not mean that you're not a strong person or that you cannot make proper decisions. So it's interesting because I read that this morning somewhere. Yeah.
How wonderful. That's exactly what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So can you then share with us an experience that you've had where you've had to be vulnerable and how you've dealt with it vis-a-vis how people have received your the way you've dealt with it and how people have reacted to that?
So I purposely did not think about an experience of mine because I wanted it to come up organically. I've had so many experiences where I have allowed myself and I've been vulnerable. And for me, vulnerability is not an issue. So the people that can push my buttons really, really pointedly, of course, are the people I love most. And my kids, I mean, Natasha's going to be 41 this month and Charlene is 38 and a half. So they're not kids, but okay, my daughters. And when they were younger, I thought I had to show them that I was really strong because even though I was married, I was really a single parent. And so I had put on this mask of, look at your mother, I'm strong, I can be your mom and I can be your dad, and I'm going to play both roles and I can manage and I'm tough. And I used to really have this tough facade on, right? And I had to. At that point, I didn't have a choice. All right. So as I started to, be vulnerable, I think they were really shocked. Like, you cry, you get pissed off really to a point where, you express it, then you have this deep sadness sometimes, you feel misunderstood sometimes, all these things, because parents are put on a pedestal because children are small. And then suddenly as they start to grow, they still see you in a certain way. And I think the most important thing is to tell children, I am human first. Before I'm your mother, I am human. I have feelings. I feel weak sometimes. I feel legless sometimes. I feel lost and confused sometimes, because by doing that, we give them permission to feel that for themselves. So yeah, mine's been a pretty rough journey, as much as it's been so exciting and so colorful, because I've really had a very, very colorful life so far.
Yeah.
And within those colors, I have had, oh my goodness, my fair share of all this stuff, because if I hadn't, I couldn't be the person I am, and I couldn't be doing this work. And I wouldn't have learned all the stuff I know, and I wouldn't have had the experiences had I not stepped out of my comfort zones constantly.
Yeah.
And I do that even today.
Yeah.
Even today. So vulnerability is something that walks with me like integrity walks with me, like authenticity walks with me. And these are things that people don't like to walk with. They like to leave them there behind.
Yeah.
Don't come with me, because you're going to let me down.
Yeah. So what would you advise anybody who might be struggling with this whole, actually, which is a lot of people, who may be struggling with vulnerability, male or female, how, if there's anything they could do to, way forward, basically?
You ought to be number one in your life, and you need to start understanding who you are. And to understand yourself, you have to really understand what you're feeling. So if you don't start to understand what you're feeling, and don't start to allow that feeling and be able to understand, why am I feeling like this? What is behind this? You will never find solutions to your life and to your emotions. Because emotions, like I said, they don't last more than 30 to 45 seconds. But whatever you're feeling has a basis to it. And if you don't look at the feeling, you cannot find the basis to it. And you cannot find the solution to an issue unless you can understand all of this. So most people don't understand who they are. Most people think that the person they are is the person they're looking in the mirror, or the one on this screen. But who am I? Who am I? Why am I here? What am I doing on this planet? What is it that, how do I function? People must start to ask these questions about themselves. It's not about whether you have a PhD or a double PhD or a double master's. It's not about, what you're driving and where you're living and what you're wearing. It's about who you are inside. We really need to step into ourselves again. People have stepped so far away from themselves that they don't even know how to reach themselves inwards again.
Wow. Okay. All right. Yeah. Lots of food for thought there. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So it's been great as usual. And we meet again soon.
Yes, we meet again. And maybe before we go, maybe you can do the introduction, because, remember someone said we don't know who Tazim is.
Okay. Yeah, I did miss that one out. So Tazim, maybe just introduce yourself for those who may not have watched this before.
Okay, so Tazim Elkington. I used to call myself a paradigm shifter, and then I felt that it had gone a bit out of date. So I now call myself an evolutionary disruptor. So what that means is all these old concepts and outdated methods and ways of living are what I debunk. I'm a hypnotherapist, I'm a regression therapist, I'm a talk therapist, I'm a psychosomatic therapist, I'm a speaker, I'm a writer, I'm a leadership trainer. I mean, these are titles, however people like to hear them. So that and much more. Yeah. So I hope that's helpful. And if anyone wants more information, please go to my website, Tazim, tazim.net, for more information.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I am Damaris Aguayu, who's been, hosting this show for the past 4 weeks now. And every 2 weeks, the past 4 episodes, 8 weeks, I'd say, right, Tazim? Yeah. So, you can catch us every 2 weeks on Cornerstone Qonversations, where we talk about stuff that matters. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. See you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Bye.